people would say, oh, that James is influenced by the Smiths. I have it on good authority that maybe the other way around. They couldn't ignore us anymore. It was a phenomenon.
Was there an inevitability that you'd get back together again?
No.
What
No,
happened?
I really felt we'd finished.
What happened?
I got this inherited liver disease that no one diagnosed. I died of it when I was 21. And the doctor was brilliant because he didn't say it's incurable. He said, Western medicine has nothing for you.
You're getting quite emotional.
Yeah.
This is a global production.
I don't know whether you can tell when I am in full fan mode during these interviews, and you may have heard me in the past describe studio guests as being particular favourites of mine or long-time heroes of mine. Never have those words applied quite as accurately as they do today. Tim Booth, welcome.
Thank you. That's very kind of you to say so.
Well, it's completely true. I think that your band James has probably, over the course of the last 30 years, more in fact, been the band to which I return again and again and again, and from which I derive over that period that the most of all the emotions, the solace, the excitement, the magic, the beauty. But anyway, enough about me. Let's talk about you.
Well, I'll try and disillusion you in the next 45 minutes.
We should begin at the beginning because you're. I mean, there's so much in your past that probably helps to explain your present and your future. But some of it took me by surprise when I was preparing for this conversation. Your family was sort of wool industry royalty of sorts.
Kind of, yes. Kind of managing director of a MP Stonehouse and Sons in Wakefield, magistrate. We just discovered, actually, my brother, that he was part of the first kind of training of the SAS in World War II. It was like the nascent beginning of Special Forces operations in Burma. He never talked about the war, my dad. Never, ever. And so my brother just discovered that about 4 years ago.
So he was very much a fine, upstanding member of society. And
yeah,
beyond.
he was. He was a magistrate. He wouldn't join the Masons. He felt that was an unfair advantage. Very Christian. A very gentle, sweet man.
Strong in the church.
Strong in the church. Very absent too, though. I didn't really know him. He was quite old when I was born.
I mean, that was relatively normal. It's hard to pin you down generationally, partly because of that, isn't it? If you had an older dad, that you don't necessarily seem immediately to fit into any generation.
Is that a pattern you've recognised in the wounding of fatherless men?
Well, also
and
the public school thing that we'll come on to as well. There's a kind of, I think, not so much fatherless. I was just thinking that both personally and creatively, because you never stop moving, you can't be pigeonholed, can you? I can't say, oh, he's very much a child of the 60s or he's very much an artist of the 80s or any of those things, because you're not. Yeah,
I think, but I think it's more, I think I am. The 60s, even though I was too young, really, I was really a child in the 60s, but I think I picked up some of the flavour and the idealism of it.
Through your sister, partly.
Probably, yeah.
Patti Smith.
But it was just around. It was just a flavour of secrecy. I remember going to a friend's house and his older brother, they were talking about Jimi Hendrix, and they were alluding, I was probably about 8 or 9, to probably they were taking acid listening to Jimi Hendrix, and they alluded to it, and then they shut themselves up, when this kid was around. But it was clearly in the air that there was this kind of rebellion going on.
And when did you begin to feel part of it? Because it's nice that you describe your dad as gentle, and your mum you've always described as very nurturing and very loving. So it's hard to pinpoint what you were rebelling against.
Well, actually, my mum was quite tough. She was quite critical, used guilt a lot and shame to control us.
Oh, really? Christian guilt?
No, she was less Christian. It was more emotional.
Look at what you're doing to me.
Yeah. Yeah, you gave me a stomach ulcer. when I dyed my hair, you've given me a stomach ulcer. It was that kind of thing. So that, you know, maybe, and now I'm probably swinging her the other way, but, you know, but it was a very middle class, you know, I lived in this village called Clifford, and I was the posh kid in a quite a poor village. But my best mates, beautifully, poetically enough, were called the Hope twins. And they were Hope. And they were the window cleaner's son who had pigeons and race greyhounds and ferrets, and beautiful man, beautiful family. And I felt more at home at their house. I'd go to their house and have chips for the first time and be treated a bit more like, there was more passion in that house.
And less concern with appearances.
Yeah, that was the middle class thing that I hated. I could be a show pony, you know, and you get dressed up. And it was so about appearances.
What were you like at school? Because before you went away to school, what were you just at the local primary school? What did you do?
First of all, local primary school, which was okay. One kind of traumatic event where I got kind of spanked in front of the school for being such an appalling human being at the age of about 6.
Scary.
And then went to this, again, a private school in Leeds. But I went mid-year, so I was quite alone, and it was quite hard. I didn't like it. I hated school, basically.
Throughout?
Yeah. And it was like, you know, at first it got quite picked on, and then one day in the locker room, and I'm probably about 8, 3 kids surrounded me, and we had a fight, and then 2 of them went away, and a group came in and formed a circle, and I had to fight this kid, and they kind of threw him onto my fist, and I knocked out his front teeth, totally by accident, just stuck out my fist. And I had 2 more fights that week, knocked out another couple of teeth, and after that, everyone left me alone. I became like, oh, you better be careful of him. But it was complete accident. It was all bluff.
And you didn't particularly want to be that person?
No, not at all.
But you had to?
But you had to.
So this is the armour of survival. It's quite early to be strapping it on, isn't it? 8 years old. But you did.
Yeah.
What about academics? Did you enjoy? Because I mean,
no,
not at all.
I hid. I saw that the SWATs got bullied and teased, and I didn't want to be one. I did have an IQ test at the time, and presumably it came back pretty high because I had to see the head of master, and he told my mum off that I was shirking, basically. But I was just trying to keep my head down.
So you were shirking, in a sense. I mean, you weren't. It wasn't.
No, I was. I was trying to keep in the middle.
A neurodiversity issue where you couldn't do the work. You just wanted to be quiet and not draw attention to yourself.
I had more control of it at the next school.
Right.
You know, I was sent to boarding school. You know, when I was 13, it was a school my dad went to in the 1920s. And you were called New Scum when you arrived by the teachers, quite a few teachers and the students, and Scum for the second year. And then you got your name in the 3rd year. And it was really Lord of the Flies, Dog Eat Dog. And that was when I really learned to act and to lie and to you know, I knew I couldn't be me, and you couldn't show homesickness or sadness or you got picked on. You couldn't show fear or you got picked on. So you had to have a good front to be able to survive that place and not get bullied.
And it worked up to a point.
It worked really well until the last year. Well, first of all, I got this inherited liver disease that no one diagnosed. So I was quite often yellow at that school. And the kids, one of my nicknames was because I was yellow. And yet no adult went, maybe he's jaundiced.
Yeah, something's not right here.
Something's not right. And so I was up and down physically and emotionally. I thought I was mad. I actually thought I'd be certifiable if people could, because I was so up and down emotionally.
What would be the moments of madness then? Would it be a sort of delusional or?
Well, for a start, I'd get sick 3 times a year. And the common medicine the nurse would give you was a thing called night nurse at the time, which had morphine in it, which is the worst thing for your liver. You'd be tripping and spaced out and couldn't focus. I thought I could hear people's thoughts. And I'm not sure to this day whether I could. I was odd and got a different nicknames at that point.
Did you have friends?
I had some friends, but the friends I wanted didn't want me. And I did have some friends who just kind of like, oh, I guess they're my friends. And that was lovely when you discover you've got friends and you didn't really know how it happened. But not many.
Where did you find solace at these times? I think music became a thing very early on.
I mean, this is all looking back, but when I was 16... First of all, we had a good housemaster when I arrived. He was quite progressive. He changed the rules. He got rid of what was called fagging the year before I came.
You were really on the cusp, weren't you? Because I think you're 12 years older than me. I went to a very similar school, and I was at the real back end. I got beaten at prep school. Proper physical queuing up outside, but fagging was a thing of the past by the time I got to public school. You were right, sort of, if, the Lindsay Anderson film, If.
I love that
I'd
film.
love that film as well.
That film
but you'd recognise that
about...
much more than I would. That was your school days.
It was.
Yeah.
It wasn't quite as bad as that.
Sure.
No, to be honest, they were melting.
Yeah.
And our house was the first to get rid of fagging a year or two before I arrived.
Wow.
But the elder boys were pissed off because they'd been fags. They'd been slaves,
yes.
basically, and they wanted to be able to treat the new kids as slaves, and then they suddenly couldn't. But there was a lot of bullying, and called new Scum all the time, so I was 16, and their new housemaster came in, and he was a rowing guy, and he was pretty insensitive, didn't like me, could see that I was gaming the system quite effectively, didn't like it at all. And I got called out of, you had to do 2 hours homework period every night, got called out of it to his office. My mum's on the phone, and she is telling me that my father's going to hospital and he probably won't survive the night. And I'm like, well, can I come home? And she's like, well, no, you're too far away. And I'm like, well, why are you telling me this now? Why don't you tell me in the morning? And it's like, it wasn't very, it's not great parenting personally. So she told me this in front of this guy, and I'm not going to cry because I don't like the guy. And I go back to my study, and there's prayers at 9:30, and you're in your bedroom at 9:45, lights out 10 o'clock, silence at 10:30, and I'm not going to sleep. So I sneak out down the corridors, and there's monitors with torches trying to catch kids sneaking out. And I get to my study, and I put on the cassette of this record I'd heard the week before and didn't think much of, but it had an amazing review, a life-changing, one of those kind of like, this is the record of the last 5 years kind of review. And I put the headphones on, and the third track was His Father Died and Left Him Alone on that New England farm. All the long black funeral cars left the scene, and the boy was just standing there. It was as if someone had spread butter on all the fine points of the stars, because when he looked up, they started to slip. And I listened to this 9-minute Patti Smith improvisation about a boy losing his father, and it took me apart in a way that only music and words can, I think. And I listened to the whole album and was like, oh my God, this is what music can do. It was completely revelatory. I had music before then, but nothing had affected me like this. And I sold my whole record collection the next week. My dad survived.
Right.
I sold my whole record collection the next week and went, I'm only going to get something as potent as this. And for about 6 months, I only had Patti Smith's Horses.
I was going to say, that's a small collection.
And Lou Reed's Berlin.
Right.
And that was it.
Wow.
And then punk came, and I thought, oh, this is worth lowering my standards. And I loved punk. It was great fun. But again, it was authentically, emotionally real.
Which is the opposite of what you had to be at school.
Yeah.
And how successful were you at that? I mean, did you, because so much of what you've done since is profoundly spiritual, and yet that is anathema, particularly for that second housemaster who would have hated anything that smacked of spiritual or smacked of cultural or artistic, anything that was airy-fairy. How far from your true self did you travel during this period? Were you cruel to other kids? Were you
That's a great question. God, once,
Yeah.
I do remember an instant going, "Oh my God, what am I doing?" But no, I don't think in general I was. And that housemaster, after my last exam, kicked me out. And
They think it's contagious, don't they?
you've got nothing to offer the school. I know you're manipulating the system. I was sneaking out to see bands downtown. I was watching the Old Grey Whistle Test on television. You weren't allowed to, at low volume, because I knew it was feeding me. And of course, you look at what I became. Obviously, this was from my soul. But what happened was the next day, a boy who was coming to be vice head of school went into him and said, "You can't throw him out. You don't know what he does for the younger kids and the homesick kids. And he doesn't tell anyone, but this is that." And so I don't think generally I was, because he spoke up for me.
What did you do for the homesick kid?
Just try to make them feel like they weren't alone. There was an older boy who did that to me. And was accused of being queer because of it. Let me sit in his bed, sit and listen to music, and
have a cup of coffee, a cup of Nescafe.
Yeah, Jonathan Akehurst, if you're out there, thank you.
Just seeing you.
Yeah,
you're getting quite emotional.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because the contrast between somebody who cared in an environment where caring was weakness would have been so acute and so powerful.
Yeah.
And so you paid it forward, as they say. You tried to be Jonathan Akehurst to other children.
I think so. You might find a few kids from that time who might say otherwise, but you know what I mean. It's like,
of course.
But that was beautiful that boy stood up for me.
When did you allow yourself to think that there may be a life doing the things?
What I did was, you get to the point where, okay, what are you going to study at university? And I knew I wanted to go to university more to decompress, something to kind of like get over this traumatic prison-like experience, or boys' boarding school, And so there's nothing I wanted to do. And then I went, well, I've acted all the way through this experience, so I'm going to study acting. I must be quite good at it.
So you knew. I didn't have that. I didn't realise until therapy, years later, that I had constructed an entirely false, they call it a survival personality. But you knew in the moment that this wasn't really you.
I knew it wasn't me. And I knew I wanted to recover buried emotions.
Yes.
And music was probably dance was. I used to lock myself in studies and turn up music and throw myself around, and that was my therapy.
Yeah.
And dance has always been the most immediate response to anything for me, to trauma, to release, to...
Where do you think that came from? Was it just Primal? Was it just...
Primal.
Yeah, there was no training, no influences, no...
Never, it was... I remember the first school disco where they brought girls in at 16, and the girls were at one end and the boys were at the other. They played music, and I went on the dance floor and threw myself around and danced my nerves and my terror. And I went back to the boys' end, and the cool boys who would normally talk to me came up and went, "What was that?
Yeah.
How did you do that?" And they were quite like, oh, they quite liked that. And nobody danced like that in those days. After house, it became a bit more common.
Okay.
But it was always a threat to people. I'd have knives drawn on me in Manchester frequently.
For throwing yourself around the dance floor?
Throwing myself around the dance floor, or, threatened quite, strongly a few times.
Because at the time it would be the two-footed shuffle, wouldn't it? It'd be one foot to the other and then out to the other, or headbangers, I suppose. Punk would have been a space where you could throw yourself around, but not in a beautiful way. In
a specific way, but it was not
had
too bad.
its own beauty.
Yeah.
But not like, I've watched you dance, and it fills me with a curious combination of envy and joy. because you do communicate something through dance that one doesn't see very often.
Yeah. It's, to me, it's the most primal thing. And I ended up obviously training in it, in learning how to teach people to go into trance states through dancing and breathing. And I trained in it. I taught it for 30 years. You know, in LA, I taught 180 classes when I lived in Los Angeles, and then I taught classes in Brighton.
We're getting ahead of ourselves.
Then, yeah, I know. But you can't go linear.
No, I don't.
And you won't be able to go linear with me, I'm
no,
afraid.
I don't. I fully accept that. But we're in Manchester now, so...
Rein me in. So I lied myself into acting school.
Right.
When I got to the interview, they said I had to write out all the plays I'd been in and my experiences. I hadn't been in a single play. And I had to lie. And I figured, well, acting is professional lying. So ergo, if I get into acting school by lying, that's justified. And I got in somehow. And I had a great time.
Did you years. Immediately? Yeah. Did you finally feel that you were among people who
much more artistic people, crazy people like me?
Yes.
And I was very hit and miss with acting. I could be good. I had difficulty learning the words, so I'd improvise, which in rhyming couplets could be a problem sometimes, and would make my fellow actors quite nervous because they never quite knew what I was going to do next. So I was hit and miss, but I obviously. Do I let you lead me into this?
Well, I want to go back to what Mum and Dad were thinking at this point, because presumably they were hoping against hope that you might end up in the family business. That you might.
Yeah, they did,
and they accepted that wasn't going to happen.
No, they did.
They're still hoping.
Various pressures they applied. The mad thing is, right? They called me Timothy because they found a will in the family 140 years earlier. 13 kids. All the money must be shared amongst the 12 children, but on no account must anything be left to Timothy. So that apparently piqued their interest. So they named this freak Timothy, and then couldn't quite deal with the consequences. My dad never saw me play, and I didn't really give a shit.
I'm glad you didn't. But were they actively disapproving?
Actively
they were.
disapproving.
It wasn't just a language they could not speak or understand.
No.
They thought it was just hideous.
They kept trying to say, "Look, you're not making any money,"
which was true for a long time.
You could work at the wool firm.
Okay,
a low job, but start the wool firm, and blah blah blah.
So this possibly, I mean, it's not exactly suggesting that it's a silver lining to the cloud that you've described, but that self-reliance that you learn at boarding school, possibly gave you the ability not to care too much about what 100%.
They thought. I cut off from my parents when they sent me to prison. It was like, well, why would you do that to your kids? But listen, the thing is, everybody at some level, I think being born is a traumatic experience. I've written a lyric just recently actually about fatherless sons on the new album we're making right now. And I get in the line that, in a sense, we are all have Stockholm Syndrome to our parents. We are these tiny creatures. They are these erratic giants shouting on the phone, getting emotional about things. And in a sense, we're in their custody. And most of us feel we didn't choose them, and often have complicated relationships with our family and parents. And so I really feel that, everyone has these different things. And they're character developing. I don't think you're meant to come into a perfect family. How would that help you grow?
Who would you be?
It's the things that they didn't provide that you have to go looking for.
Yes.
And that's the journey of individuation. And I think it's a crucial journey for everybody. So I don't feel sorry for myself for any of it. I don't feel the liver disease has been probably the best teaching of all. I died of it when I was 21. And was taken to Leeds Killingbeck Hospital. And the doctor was brilliant because he didn't say it's incurable. He said it's as if you had hepatitis C last week. Western medicine has nothing for you. And this was 1981. And I went, oh, okay, so somebody does. And I threw myself into meditation, Chinese herbalism, homeopathy, all the things that yoga that people do now, but in those days were totally fringe and cranky. I worked out quite soon there were certain foods I couldn't eat. Again, allergies to foods were unheard of, and you were not a proper man if you couldn't eat wheat or cheese or the things that I couldn't
So you
eat.
just would listen to your body.
I'd listen to my body and work it out with the help of the fringe medicine.
How did you
people.
find them, Tim? Because this is pre-internet and stuff like that.
So there was a magazine called Cahoots that had been set up by a lovely woman in Manchester who was one of the inheritors of Chase Manhattan Bank, and she taught Tai Chi and Qigong, and I went and learnt Tai Chi and Qigong with her, and she had made a directory of all these mad things to do, and off I went.
And you could feel them working.
Some did, some didn't.
Sure.
Some were more bluff.
And it worked. I mean, with regards to the liver
Very
condition.
much. I have to watch it now and again.
Sure.
Every so often I get yellow and disorientated and confused. But most of the time I'm an athlete.
Yeah.
You know, I feel
I've seen you on stage.
Incredible for
Yes.
my age. And
Well, even for my age, you'd be incredible, right? And younger. I mean, you have acted. You got the nod from the Manchester Evening News for Best Newcomer when you acted in. It was an Edward Bond play in Bolton that you did.
Very
and been
heavy.
in the Batman film as well.
Yeah.
I love the line about Christian Bale saying that Lade had saved his life, so you can come away thinking that Batman is a James fan. There's some incredible sort of moments on that side of things. But did you feel at Manchester, it was quite a good vintage as well. There were some people there with you who've gone on to greatness, weren't there?
Ben Elton was in there at the time. I acted in a number of his plays, hung out with him. Lovely, you know. Rick and Adrian had left the year before, but they dropped
Their
in.
shadow remained.
Their shadow remained. Mira Sayal was
Wow.
in my year.
Gosh.
Was wonderful.
And did you feel you had the wherewithal to make it as an actor, did you think? Was that what you wanted?
No, I don't think I did. I watched some of them there. One particular man called Richard Sandel. I remember watching him do Bent in rehearsal and be able to access tears with the director kind of almost conducting him and going, holy shit, I can't do that. You know, watching a great actor work and going, oh, I don't think I'm there. I could be interesting. And I knew I could get there. I went and did that play at Bolton Octagon years later, almost to prove to myself I could. And because I'd been offered some films in Hollywood and turned them down.
Why did you turn them down?
I think fear.
Yeah.
That I hadn't felt I was quite good enough. So I wanted to go off to the sticks and do something where nobody would see it and I could just find out if I was any good.
And you liked what you found?
Terrified.
Yes.
I think I was again, hit and miss. And I think that when they gave me the award, I think they came on a good night. Other nights I would find myself sitting outside the character and going, how do I get in?
Oh, be aware of that on stage.
yeah,
You
horrible
could feel,
feeling.
God, that must be awful.
Horrible.
Because acting, it's not acting, is it? You need to be real, not
yeah.
acting. There's the
Yeah.
difference.
So I think I was erratic still. And I still think I am.
So if I'd met you then, you've got your health under control. You've started long before it was cool or fashionable, but for the most pragmatic of reasons, you're leading a life, quite an ascetic life. You're certainly a life of self-care. And I'd said, what do you want to be when you graduate, or what do you see yourself doing in 10 years' time? What do you think you would have said?
I mean, I knew when I got there, a friend wanted to start a band with me. So that was in my mind as my biggest passion. I think I partly chose Manchester at university because I'd seen a life-changing Iggy Pop concert there and a life-changing Patti Smith concert.
When you'd climbed the wall from school, or subsequent when you'd escaped with the organ teacher's help, I think, wasn't it? It was...
You know the story. Yeah, it was amazing. Because the first gig we organised from a school trip, I've gone back in time, was to see the Clash on the first ever punk rock tour with the Jam, the Subway Sect, the Buzzcocks, the Slits. And so we had 30 school party and schoolboys dressed in school uniform going to Wolverhampton to watch the Clash and the Jam because they didn't know what punk was. It was the first tour. And after that, they were like, we're never letting you organise another trip again. So we found Iggy Pop and we persuaded one teacher to take 3 of us. Oh, he's not punk. He's predates punk. Yeah, and that gig was amazing, astonishing. Iggy covered in blood, bare-chested, doing what Iggy does. So that's why I probably ended up in Manchester to some degree. I had these kind of peak experiences in Manchester that bonded me to the city even before I got to live there.
So you had a friend who wanted to put a band together,
and it didn't happen. And then maybe a year and a half into university, my girlfriend was away and I thought she was finishing with me. I was in the cellar bar and throwing myself around dancing. And I went to sit down and these 3 16-year-olds were stealing my beer. And I went, oi! And they all stood up like, you want to make anything of it? And we started talking, which was the wise choice. Yes. And Paul said, we have a band. I loved you dancing. And would you like to dance for our band? And I was like, yeah. We're rehearsing in the Withington Scout Hut tomorrow. Okay. He wrote his phone number on my wrist. And the next morning I woke up a little hungover and went, okay. And next day I saw nascent James, And by the weekend I was shaking a tambourine, singing backing vocals, opening for Orange Juice in Sheffield.
That's incredible, isn't it? So they were already more than competent. So the other 2, you mentioned Paul Gilbertson and Jim Glennie and Gavin Whelan were the other 2. They already had a sound. They already had a...
Yes, competent might be pushing it. They'd stolen their equipment a year earlier. Paul and Jimmy were self-taught. Gavin was very competent. He was a great drummer and trained. And the others were learning their craft like I was. After about and Jenny Glennie was the singer at that time. The original singer was taking a sojourn in Strange Ways.
This is something that people who haven't dug deeper than the known music, will be surprised by. I think that James, quite a rough crowd,
rough crowd,
into which this public school boy inserted himself or was inserted. I mean, that's a fascinating dynamic.
They pulled me in.
Yeah.
I mean, I was a couple of years older. I mean, 2 weeks after we'd started, Paul was like, can we go out tonight to a club? I want to tell you something, like a confession. And I went with him and Gavin. And he told me, look, fights come to me. I don't look for fights, but they just come to me and I win them, but I don't look for them. And I was like, oh, okay. And Gavin was there going, it's true. And we left the club. Paul needs a piss in the street, pees against a car wheel. And this guy walks down the street and starts a fight with him. And he's got 2 mates. And me and Gavin are going, we won't join in if you don't join in. Yeah. And we're holding them off. And Paul has a fight and wins it. And it was like, there's your proof. And it wasn't the guy's car, It was just some random dude who took offense. And so it was like, oh, okay, what have I got into here? And it was true. It was like fights came.
What was your response to that? Was it, I hope this isn't the wrong word, was it exciting? Was it real in a way that perhaps you had...
Well, because he didn't start it.
Yes, no, of course.
Paul was a lovely human being. Very innocent, very real. We all loved him. He was the leader of the band. He unfortunately couldn't tolerate weed, and he became. He had a psychosis. Was eventually in a psychiatric unit, and then prison later. And we tried to stop him. Partly we got into meditation because I wanted to find an alternative high for him. And I thought meditation would do it. So we dragged him along to Buddhist meditation. And then we found this organization, LifeWave, which had this dramatic revelation meditation where you see a light and you hear a sound, and from then on you can see a light and hear a sound. And I was still recovering from liver disease, and I kind of gave myself a year to find proof of the existence of God or meaning to life, or I was quite happy to burn out otherwise. I hadn't really found my meaning, and I was still in and out of illness at that point. And that meditation provided it for me and Jimmy. It didn't for Paul. Okay. They kicked him out for weed. They were like, we can't teach you meditation if you just come here stinking of skunk every time. And unfortunately, he couldn't come with us.
Already, well, not already, but again, you're doing that thing you did at school where you're trying to care for people. You're trying to help him. Did it kick both ways? Would it be over romantic to say that very, very quickly you felt as if you were in the place and with the people that you were meant to be with?
It's interesting. We didn't communicate very well, but we'd go in the drummer's kitchen for 5 hours and play without talking, and have a Sony cassette machine recording the chaos for 5 hours, and then listen back and go, ooh, that could be made into a song. Let's try doing that bit over again.
Were you singing by now? Had you?
Yeah, I was singing by then. And but this was 4 or 5 days a week. But it wasn't really with much conversation. Paul was the one I was closest to. He was Jimmy's best friend. But when Paul went after about 2 years, where we gave him an ultimatum because he was a different person, trying to play his guitar upside down, left-handed, and he was the only guitar in the band, and it was just chaos. I mean, the songs couldn't hold, and we were starting to get interest in big gigs with New Order, and New Order's manager Rob Gretton came in and begged Paul to play the guitar the right way up and not smoke weed, and Rob Gretton was a pothead, and he was in our rooms begging Paul not to smoke weed. I mean, that was how bad it was.
That's significant.
And we were playing the Brixton Academy, and we managed to persuade him to play the guitar the right way up for that gig. So it was, when he left, I wouldn't say I was close to the other members. We were doing something together that was a shared purpose. We brought Larry in at that point. And so we were a group, for better or worse.
Was there ambition?
Strange ambition.
Yeah.
It was all about live. We thought live was the authenticity. We didn't want to record. So when Factory came and asked us to record an album, we were like, no. And then they came.
But everybody else in Manchester at the time.
Everybody wanted to be signed to Factory.
Exactly.
And then they came and said an EP, and we went, no. And they went, a single? And we went, okay, can we have Stutter, the song? No, you're having our worst songs. Because we knew we'd take a while to learn how to record, so we gave them what we thought were our worst songs. And then they came back, will you make an album? No. An EP? No. We gave them the next decent songs.
And was that all collegiate? Was that all of you?
All of us.
That's extraordinary.
Yeah, we were bloody minded. We did all these photo shoots. We wouldn't do interviews.
Right.
We did. We only did interviews because the promoters said, unless you get more of a profile, we can't give you gigs.
Right.
We did a photo shoot with the great Kevin Cummings, and we all turned our faces away, except for Gavin, because we didn't want our faces to have anything to do with people liking the music. It was like it had to be about the music, not how we looked. And we wore the shittiest clothes on purpose, partly to not look cool. It was all kind of anti-fashion, you know. If you look at early Talking Heads, they dressed a bit like us too. Yeah. It was all about the music. But they learned quite quickly that actually image does have something to do with it, and you better wise up. It took us till, I think, the Laid album, when we were in our 30s, to realise, that we should be looking a little cooler.
But the sound was obviously reaching parts that other bands were not reaching, partly because of the people that wanted you to support them. I suppose probably, I mean, you've mentioned New Order, but the Smiths were probably the biggest in that period.
Yeah, that was interesting. I've been told that Morrissey was a big fan. It's quite funny because later on people would say, that James is influenced by the Smiths. We were going a year and a half before the Smiths. And I have it on good authority that maybe the other way around. And I got very close to Morrissey and Johnny and the band, and they took us on tour and loved us, and Morrissey said the most beautiful things about us at the time. And they really looked after us, yeah.
But you never made any money during this period, really?
Not really, 30 quid a week.
And it didn't matter to you? You weren't. No. That's why I asked about ambition, and you say it's a strange ambition because you just wanted to...
The ambition was to make great music and to be a great band live.
To give that audience something very special.
To have... it's about being in the moment in a room. And I don't know why we were scared of recording, but recording was much more secondary on our list.
In some ways, that still is what you're about.
Yes, but really once we met Brian Eno, then recording became a big feature.
If you're going to get introduced to the importance of recording, you could do worse, couldn't you, than Brian Eno?
And the fun of recording.
Yeah.
And that's not to denigrate. Lenny Kaye was amazing with us, but
sure.
we were too controlling. We wouldn't let him add much. We turned his hair grey in 6 weeks. He came with beautiful black hair and left with grey hair. And he's the godfather of my son. I mean, we get on brilliantly, but we put him through the ringer. God bless him.
So even as you're pursuing this the sort of on stage magic, you're not looking at other bands and thinking, "Oh, we want some of that." You're not thinking, "Oh, if I only had enough money to do this." You are quite a pure.
We were very purist and Luddite.
Right.
No drum machines, no synthesizers. It all has to be done in the moment. Lots of improvisation.
Lots of fighting.
No, not so much fighting. The first few gigs were tough because their audience were fighters.
Right.
But they only had 30, 40 followers at that point. But they all loved the old singer who was at that point away.
Her Majesty's pleasure.
Incarcerated. And so I remember the first few gigs, a few people wanted to kind of get in my face and see if the Posh Kid could hold his own. Yeah.
And so what changed? What's the next big junction then? For
Good question. I'd say we started getting regular gigs, Manchester, London and Glasgow. And the Manchester and Glasgow audiences would double every time. And the Glasgow ones became passionate. And you're going, we're doing something right. Someone's getting this. Even though we never got played once on daytime radio for the first 7 years. Just Peel. John Peel.
Did a Peel session.
A couple of Peel sessions. And so it was seeing the audiences amplify and their passion amplify in Manchester and Glasgow, and to some degree London, but mainly Manchester and Glasgow because the audiences are more expressive in those places. Northern audiences are wilder in general. And so even though people are like, you're not making any money, and my parents are like, you've been doing this 6 years, for God's sake. But by 6 years, we were playing to thousands of people and they were going crazy. And we had to sit down. We started playing it live a year and a half before we released it. And probably the fourth gig in Paris at La Locomotive, 1,000 people. And one by one, the audience sat down on the floor.
Magic.
And you're like, this is an unreleased song. And you, by the end of the song, sit down. The whole audience was sitting on the floor. And something's just happened that you didn't manipulate.
That gave you a sense that your music was reaching places that you...
I mean, by the time Radio 1, BBC were playing us, actually played us, we were playing to 2 nights in Manchester to 10,000 a night, and all the audiences were sitting down. And they couldn't They couldn't ignore us anymore. It was a phenomenon.
Well, I mean, that's not entirely fair. They couldn't ignore you anymore, but also you had moved slightly away from demanding that they did ignore you, or at least from refusing to engage in behaviour that was slightly more of a piece with a band of the size that you were becoming, and the importance that you were becoming.
Yes.
So we've reached the bit from...
It will accept that.
Go on.
The fact that they wouldn't play anything live because it was REM's Losing My Religion that made everybody go, oh, alternative music's got something. And I think that opened the door to them playing our type of music on the radio. But yes, we weren't ready, and we were still very difficult, hugely stubborn band. Very stubborn band.
And I mean, now we've reached the point from which the story is more widely known. You know, this is, and there are stories of breakups in the band, in personal lives as well. You doing your work with Angelo Badalamenti, you going away to do acting. The real world intruding even after you'd had this extraordinary period of success, thanks to the inland revenue sort of turning everything upside down. And yet throughout all of this, the thing that, and then the band, of course, gets back together in 2012, was it?
06, I think.
Okay, sorry. You have always, all of you, been absolutely determined to keep moving, to keep doing new stuff, to keep... You mentioned you're writing now. For me, the last album was I just beautiful. I mean, absolutely brilliant. And I saw you live a couple of months ago. It's the best gig I've ever been to. And that's extraordinary for a band that has been around as long as you have. How conscious is it? How conscious was it?
Of which bit?
Of not ever wanting to stop and settle.
We don't have to force it, which is amazing. Every song we write is through improvisation. And at its best, it feels like we are tuning into something that's already exists. And each time it's slightly different and moves us forward and gives us a sense of momentum. I think, Jimmy changing his bass, like he used to play very high up on the neck, quite influenced by Peter Hook. And then suddenly he started playing dirtier bass, 2009, and it sounded and dancey bass. And it was like, so that suddenly, oh, that's really interesting. Let's go down that route. Turning up Mark, our keyboardist, who's the shyest musician you've ever met and would always have himself so quiet in the room that no one could hear him. And so you couldn't build songs on him. And then on the Moving On album, I just went over and went, Mark, you're going to have to get used to this, and just cranked him up and going, because he's astonishing musician. And so becoming a bit more synth-based, keyboard-based. Chloe joining and doing these amazing backing vocals. So each album's got different kind of flavour to it. The new one's got a new flavour to it. I probably won't give it away at this point because it won't come out till next year. No. But again, something's happened that it's like, oh, that's really different. We haven't done that before. And it's a lovely feeling. But it's also because none of us control the music. Four of us improvise it. We've all got very different tastes. Then each of us, we hire a cottage overlooking the Dales for 3 weeks in 1 week bursts. We jam 5-6 hours a day, record it really well, then go back and listen to it. And any one of us can go, I'm going to work on day 6, jam 4. And that day 6, jam 4 might be 60 minutes long. It might be 20 minutes long. And then you can see that you could shape a vague song out of it, and you chop it up with an engineer, and then you present it back to the songwriters, and then we vote which ones are the best ones. And
Where do the lyrics come into this project?
Some of them come in the immediate improvisations, usually a line or two, which then tells me what I should be singing about. Like there's usually a couple of lines where I can't not sing that line. So it's going to be about this. And it almost dictates to me what the topic is. So it's quite a random, going with the flow process, which is what we are. We're a random going with the flow band. Then we take it to the rest of the band members and they contribute their parts. So the song just keeps on moving without anyone doing it on purpose. And somehow this keeps it fresh. I think singer-songwriters generally run out of ideas after a certain amount of years. Then there's two people working together. That can get rigid. But four people where no one controls it, it sprawls and goes into areas that nobody particularly wanted it to go into, but ends up being a happy accident. And I'm a terrible musician. I come in at the wrong place.
Oh, you've got a doctorate.
Yeah,
What
I've got a doctorate.
Your PhD.
But I'm a primitive musician, and I love my primitiveness. I'll come in singing at places that most singers would never choose to come in singing. You can hear it on the song sometimes.
Yeah.
But that is a happy accident. And the great musicians in the band go, oh, let's keep that. Let's find a way to work that in and make it work. Well, other bands would probably throw it out and say, well, that was a mistake.
So in a sense, the songwriting process explains the band's momentum. Because it's the same thing, if I'm understanding you correctly. The way that you write songs explains why the band keeps moving, why the band is always exploring. And
I think so.
Adventuring is a word that just popped into my mind. You're always having adventures.
Well, we go fishing.
Yes.
And it's like, you don't know what you're going to get, but we go fishing.
Was there an inevitability? Because you said, I don't want to misquote you, but you did talk about the responsibility, the weight of responsibility of supporting 6 other mouths to feed when you left after 11 albums. Was there an inevitability that you'd get back together again?
No.
What happened?
I really felt we'd finished.
What happened?
We've got a documentary coming out in August, and it's pretty well documented in that documentary. Addictions,
Right.
rock and roll excesses, that because I had my liver, I couldn't participate. Wasn't a moral choice; it was a physical choice, and I thought someone would die. It was bad, and dangerous. I thought someone would die or someone would get killed.
Gosh.
And
So you needed to get away.
Yeah, because we are one of the only industries that provide booze after your work.
Gosh.
The rider. What a ridiculous concept. Where else do you find that? After you work now, someone's going to give you a bottle of whiskey, James. What are you going to, you know what I mean? It's what the hell? And maybe other things.
Sure.
And so it's a crazy industry. And if that stuff's sitting on the table for young men, eventually they might participate. And other things obviously were sitting on the table too in different ways that were not healthy. And so I left because I also felt incredibly lonely because everybody was going out there. And I thought someone would die. So I left. And I never thought it would reform. I absolutely left.
The documentary is called James Getting Away With It, and covers the 4 decades that we're not going to cover properly in the course of this conversation. Where did the idea come from for it? Who approached
the documentary? Chris Atkins, great documentary maker. He was called up to the Levinson inquiry for his political documentary. He was in prison, incarcerated, and they would play music but not name who the musicians were, not the band. And certain lyrics would really speak to him in prison, and he'd write down the lyrics. And when he got out, he looked them up, and loads of them were my lyrics. And he said to his agent, I want to make a documentary about these guys. So
amazing that no one had, really, when I think about it, and you put it like that.
It was never anything we wanted to do.
Got it.
Most bands, when they have addictions and wildness, it becomes part of their publicity machine. Oasis, you can name millions of bands. It's part of their rock and roll swagger. we closed the wagons, and protected people.
Yes.
And tried to. And so it's stuff we've never talked about until this documentary, really, or we'd alluded to bits, but it was not something we really wanted to sell.
No, of course. Well, you're not really selling this. There's a sort of, without being pompous about it, there's almost a responsibility to have the story properly recorded when the achievements have been so extraordinary.
And we were getting so old.
Well, I wasn't going to say that, but when the canon is so large.
We have a big canon. Let's go to that euphemism.
I don't want to go without talking more about the dance, about the ecstatic movement and the incredible role that it's played in your life. I mean, I'd start with a stupid question. When you meet music teachers or singing teachers and they say, everyone can sing. You just need to fight. Can anyone do the dance that you?
Yeah.
Really? 'Cause I got ghosted by my Tai Chi teacher. I tried to learn Tai Chi and he stopped taking my calls. So I'm not sure everyone can do what you described.
Because you dance your own dance.
Right.
And only you can dance your own dance. And if your dance is a dance of fear and self-consciousness, then that's where you start. And if you keep coming back, then it changes. So you start from wherever you start from. You can't jump ahead. You can, and so everybody has an individual dance, and there's nothing that doesn't have permission.
So when you're watching Richard Sandal act, is it his name?
Yeah,
and you're
Sandals, yeah.
Sandals, and you're thinking, I can't do that. Actually, and then you're on stage in Bolton sometimes, and you're thinking, oh no, I'm out of.
Sometimes I hit it.
That's what I mean. You have to do it.
But say with music, I can be consistent and I know what to do. With acting, and I think I definitely got myself to a much higher level at Bolton. I was on stage for 2.5 hours every night, but it terrified the life out of me. And so I definitely improved and got, in the Christopher Nolan movie, Batman Begins, and he ummed and ahed about, he had some named actors even going for my little part. So I did all right,
Did great. So, do you have highlights? Isn't quite the right word, but are there things? The more surprised you are to find yourself somewhere, the more satisfying it is. Is there a sense that when you move out of your comfort zone, you derive more pleasure from things?
Yeah, I think so. I released a novel about a year and a half ago.
When I Died for the First Time.
When I Died for the First Time. That took me 10 years to write. And I went to this mad writing class in LA that was a lot of fun. And gradually, you have to read stuff out every week to a group, and gradually began to get the confidence that I could do that. And I'm going to write more, I'm sure. But it was just so difficult. The hardest thing I've ever done.
Is it?
Yeah.
What's the uniting theme in all the things you've ever done? What is the sort of thing that knits them all together from the inside?
I think, and I hope this isn't bypassing, but I love altered states. I love going into altered states, and through dancing, through yoga, through meditation, through lovemaking, through, and I work with a Peruvian shaman in Peru, working with medicine work. And in those altered states, they often feel more real to me than reality. And being on stage when I'm performing, if I can get to those altered states, which I usually do, James get me high as a kite. We all come off stage ecstatic. I'd say 18 out of 20 gigs now, because we've got good at it. Yeah. We know what we're doing. It's almost ritualized. It's a ceremony. And we want the audience to leave in the same state. It's a kind of feedback loop between us and the audience where we're trying to build this charge in the room to leave everybody in ecstasy. And so I guess that's my life's work, to try and but there's also an aspect, but it still has to be grounded in reality. you still I still have to sing some dark lyrics and have some grief in there and loss in there and loneliness in there. It can't just be ABBA, you know, or just, and ABBA actually had a few good
they did.
lyrics, but it can't just be joy for the sake of joy. It's got to be joy grounded in reality for me, for it to reach people.
And you have the space now to keep all of these plates spinning.
Yeah. I don't know if I have the time. The writing is hard for me to choose at the moment. Yeah. But I will. I've got another few books in me, I think. But yeah, I love it all, really. I'm just so blessed I get paid to follow my passions. And it's incredible. And, you know, you don't have a 9-piece band to make money. You have it to make great art. And we love what we do, and we love each other pretty strongly at the moment.
Yes.
Huge respect going on in the band for each other. You know, I'd be nothing without my fellow musicians. I'd be a bad poet. And so I'm just feel so lucky.
You follow your passions and you feed ours.
Yeah.
Tim Booth, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
This has been a global production.